Hello, Laziali all over the world. Welcome to this special episode of Lazio Lounge. Well, it looks like we recorded a podcast yesterday morning. Sarri listened to the podcast and decided to quit the job, leave Lazio. So this is the official version of the Lazio. Uh, Good morning, Karsten. Good morning, Alasdair. This is the official version. Then there are other versions about Sarri leaving Lazio. But before talking of what happened in the last 24, 48 hours, Alasdair, we've been talking about the situation. I don't think you are shocked about Sarri quitting, right?
I'm pretty shocked, yeah. Are you
Oh,
not? That he's walked away. I mean, I'm shocked that it took our podcast to get him to make the move, which was, how long was it after you pressed publish? And I think it was maybe 30 minutes later. um, but no, I mean, I think the idea of him leaving Lazio was always there, and is always something we've talked about. But I think that was always, and even yesterday when we were discussing this, something that we were talking about in the context of the end of the season, um, rather than midway through. And of course, him resigning in itself is a shock because it's a big statement, it's a big move. It loses him money. It's him walking away rather than being pushed away. So I think all those things have definitely caught me by surprise.
Carsten, from far away from Rome, living the dream, what do you think about Sarri's quitting? Were you expecting? Do you see that coming?
I didn't see it coming. I'm very disappointed that he's leaving because I have high regards for Sarri. I think he's one of the best coaches maybe in the world, even definitely in Italy. I don't think Lotito would ever have fired Sarri ever. I think he was very lucky to get him. And Lotito doesn't really fire coaches. I mean,
No.
he's usually they're around for a really long time. But this was completely and utterly Sarri's decision to leave. And I think that Vittorio, I think that you should explain to me and to Alasdair and to everybody what seemed to happen in the dressing room, why he took that decision, because I've heard a number of different versions.
Yeah, so there are a lot of things that happened in the last 48 hours, I would say. The first one is that after the dreadful game against Udinese, Sarri went to the locker room and said to the players once again, because he already said this to the players, if I'm the problem, tell me and I will leave straight away. No one answered, and Sarri went away, and Lotito said, hey, we're gonna to retiro because the situation is bad. The morning afterwards, on Tuesday, so when the players were back to Formello to start the retiro, Sarri met again with the players and said, I've decided to quit the job, leave Lazio, because you're not playing like you did last year, and I believe you're not following me anymore. So if I'm the problem, I leave the job, and so you can finally start playing like you did last year and save the season if possible. Here there are two versions. One saying that Ciro Immobile and Luis Alberto tried to convince the manager to stay, and there's the other one who said that nobody said nothing pretty much, and Sarri was deluded by this behavior of the player and went away simply and left the job. It looks like Lotito tried to convince Sarri, but he was convinced and decided to walk away. Obviously, a lot of rumors pop up yesterday. Lotito thinking about Tudor, about Tommaso Rocchi, even Parolo was linked to Lazio. But in the end, is Martuscello who was the deputy of Sarri that will be in charge. And I think we're going to talk about this going forward. This doesn't make no sense at all. But Sarri felt he has been betrayed by Lazio players, in particular by the most experienced player, right? Ciro Immobile, Luis Alberto, Romagnoli, etc. That's why he quit the job. Did you felt the same? Honestly, at Lazio Udinese, I have the same impression, but maybe I was wrong. Did you feel the same thing, Alasdair?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we touched on yesterday. I would say, for anyone listening to this, it probably still is worth listening to the podcast from yesterday, just for the stuff on the Udinese game, at least, because we did go into that quite a lot, and the players' reaction and a lot of the stuff that kind of has built up to this. We had Luis Alberto being unhappy at coming off. We had Ciro Immobile complaining about being subbed off. I mentioned Danilo Cataldi losing his mind, punching the ground when a goal was conceded. And it felt like this team was, breaking a bit. I think that this move by Sarri, we know he's a really principled guy. He is not afraid to say what he thinks, to stand up for what he believes in. And that's something I think that people have always quite respected about him. And this is a huge move for him, because that is essentially what he's doing this on, is on principle. He genuinely must believe that this is gone. People talk about losing the dressing room all the time. It rarely happens that a coach kind of accepts that they've lost the dressing room and does something about it. And he thinks this is for the best interests of the team, or that he just can't do anymore. So I think this decision reflects really badly on everyone else apart from Sarri. And we can come on to discuss Sarri's legacy and how we look back on his time as a coach. But this actual moment right now, I think it makes the players look terrible. And I think the club has a hell of a lot to answer for here as well, because I think that's the combination of those two things that have kind of let Sarri down and left him feeling abandoned. And Karsten, I mean, this is something we've kind of suspected a bit from performances, like Vittorio said, but it's something else, isn't it, to then see that translate into a coach just deciding, and such an experienced coach as well, I can't do anything about these guys.
No, I think I agree with almost everything you said there, Alasdair. I blame the players a whole lot. I think that especially the more experienced players have not lived up to their responsibilities this year. I must admit, I think Luis Alberto is a problem for Lazio. I think he's a problem because he's not playing well at all. And when you play with somebody like Luis Alberto, who is so slow, who slows the play down as well, you're kind of caught in a way of playing that you can't really play any differently as long as you have a player like that. So when that player delivers a lot of goals, like 10 goals, like he did last year, and lots of assists, you can sort of forgive the fact that he's a stumbling block sometimes when you play, but when he's not delivering, like he's certainly not delivering this year. I think that there's a problem, and I also think that Luis Alberto has a lot to say in the dressing room. We've talked about this fact before, that we think that Luis Alberto is he's a difficult character, and if he's I think he has a big voice in the dressing room, which he should have. He's been in Lazio for many years, and he's one of the star players. I think maybe Lazio needs to get rid of Luis Alberto, to be completely honest, without being in the dressing room. I mean, I don't know, but I think that Sai has been sort of abandoned by especially Luis Alberto, but maybe also Ciro Immobile and Sakani, and maybe even Philip Anderson, even though he loves him like his own son.
Now, here in Rome, just to be updated, Lazio released a statement saying that Sarri has left his job. They published it on Instagram as well, and Luis Alberto put like to this post, and this like is creating a lot of debate here in Rome. A lot of Lazio fans are saying Luis Alberto put like to the announcement that Sarri's quit his job. This is a sign that he was against Sarri. Now, I don't like this type of journalism, but Alasdair, is this the sign that really Luis Alberto didn't want Sarri anymore?
No, come on. I hate these stories. There was even one in the paper today about Sergei liking something. Come on. I mean, if you actually come out and say something, we can talk about it. But I think liking a post is not serious news. I think there are plenty of things to talk about around Alberto and around Lazio's players without going into social media posts. But that's just me, maybe.
Can I ask you guys, what do you think about this 2 years and a half of Sarri as Lazio manager? Was it a good stint? Do we think that he overachieved? He was a good manager, bad manager, expecting more? Let's recap. Lazio finished second last year, and I think it was just the second time in 24 years we finished top two in Serie A. We didn't win anything, but even in a bad season like this one, we passed the group phase of the Champions League. So where do you stand? Positive season for Sarri, positive stint at Lazio for Sarri, or not? Starting from Karsten.
So I think that Sarri has been a really good coach for Lazio. If you look at Lazio's team, if you look at their squad, it has the sixth highest wages. If you look at transfer market, it's only number 8. If you look at the squad value, so this is a team that should maybe finish between number 5 and number 9 every season. If you're only looking at how you can evaluate the team out, if you just look at the numbers, he finished 5th and 2nd in the 2 seasons he was there. I think he's overachieved a whole lot. Lazio progressed from the Champions League this season and beat Bayern Munich at home, which is one of the biggest wins in Lazio's history, maybe the last 20, 25 years. It's a huge, huge win. So I think that he's overachieved. I mean, Lazio will probably end up number 8 or number 9 this season. And if you look at the strength of the squad, I'm not really sure that that's completely off. I mean, do you think that Lazio has a much better squad than someone like Fiorentina? I don't think so. But I mean, you may have a different opinion.
Alasdair, what's your take on the 2 years and a half of Sarri?
Yeah, it's interesting to see Karsten say that, because I think that it's something people seem to have very strong feelings about one way or the other. There's plenty of people who are quite strongly anti-Sarri as well, even though the reaction has generally to this been pretty positive in his favour. I'd say, if you're taking the emotion out of it, I think you'd look back and say he's had first season was about on par, kind of average. In terms of the league finish and so on, I would say actually, considering the adaptation from Inzaghi ball to Sarri's system, that was quite a good season in retrospect in terms of changing the way the team played. Last season was a great season. There's no other way around it. I mean, the European campaign was a disaster, but finishing second with your best points total since winning the Scudetto, with 22 or whatever it was clean sheets, beating every other team in the top 7, winning 2 derbies. Last season was an incredible overachievement, really, from what was expected. And then this season's been a disappointment. So I think that there's no other way around that. We can discuss how much of that is Sarri's fault. I think he's been hung out to dry a bit in terms of the squad he's been given compared to what he wanted. He's not been given the players he asked for. The club hasn't invested enough to back him. But at the same time, he's also been guilty of not getting the best out of the squad he's got this season. This season has been a very big, confused mess for me, because there's been no consistency. The team has really struggled to find a style that works. No area of the pitch has really been working. I don't think all of these things are down to Sarri, but there is no way around the conclusion that it's been a poor year. So I think overall we'll look back on it as being a success, but a small success rather than a huge one, because the 2 seasons either side of the second place finish haven't been incredible. put it that way.
Yeah, we talked about players not playing anymore for the manager, and we know that when things get bad, it's always the manager that pays, right? You cannot sell 25 players or at least the starting 11. So Sarri uh, understood that and said, well, if I'm the problem, I'm leaving. Now, moving forward, the solution, the replacement for Sarri, it's the thing that convinced me even less. Everybody was talking about the players rejected Sarri ball, no more 3-3-3, and then Lotito goes and say, okay, Martuscello, you are in charge of the team, and I know people are saying it will be there only for the next game, but rumors are that he could end the season if nothing terrible happens. Obviously, if you lose the derby 10-0, which can happen, he's going to be out. Obviously, the derby is so important in Rome. But it could be that Martuscello keeps playing, keep being the manager till the end of the season. In the podcast of yesterday, and this is why it's important, we mentioned this, right, Alasdair? We said the last, 7-8 minutes of Lazio Udinese, we played with a revolutionary 4-2-3-1. And one of the reasons why Martuscello has been kept is because he can move from the 4-3-3 to this solution. Even though today the newspaper saying Martuscello will keep playing with the 4-3-3. So my question is, if the problem was the 4-3-3 of Sarri, you don't keep the deputy of Sarri that keep playing that same style of football, right? Doesn't make sense to me. Or no?
But not just for that. I mean, I think that the whole dynamic is weird. If Sarri has left because the players aren't with him anymore, then why are they going to be with his deputy? I just don't get it. And I have read as well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's been getting reported and thrown around in the last 24 hours. But I did read as well that Martuscello only wants to stay so as to not let the players win, and that's a really unhealthy atmosphere to then continue a season for. And so, okay, this might just be the Frosinone game, and then they find someone else. But I find this entire dynamic, tactics aside, a bit of a strange one. And I don't know, possibly, a lot's been made of Sarri is leaving 4 or 5 million euros on the table by resigning. So his coaching staff won't be earning that much. So they maybe feel like they can't resign because they don't want to, terminate their contract like that. But I just feel like the atmosphere in camp right now must be really strange.
Karsten?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question what to do right now. I'm leaning towards getting a sort of maybe a Tommaso Rocchi, maybe promoting him from the youth team and getting him to be the Lazio coach for the rest of the season. I don't think that Lazio should rush into getting a new coach. Lazio only has 3 games left that really matter, and that's the 2 semifinals against Juventus in the Coppa Italia and maybe a final, and then the derby. The rest of the matches don't really matter. I don't think Lazio has a chance of getting European football anyway. And I think the most important thing is that Lazio gets a really good coach this summer. So I agree with you that the choice right now is weird. And if Lotito is holding on to the assistant coach to punish the players because he doesn't want to let them win, that's a very weird thing to do. But I wouldn't put it past Lotito. I wouldn't put it past Italian football in general. I mean, that might be the reason why he's doing it. I have no idea, and I would love to know what the players think about this. They're not going to go out and say anything. I know that, but it's just so interesting that Sarri has this sense that the players don't believe in him anymore, right?
Yep.
And I think all coaches would have that. If you ask the players twice, if I am the problem, I will leave. What do you think? What do you have to say about that? So if the players don't say you're not the problem, we'll work harder. if they don't say that, if they don't say anything, I think they're just confirming his thoughts, and I think that's the reason why he's leaving. I think we have to remember that Sarri is a really proud man. He's an older man. He's a very special guy. He's very, very proud. And I mean, I think most coaches would probably just stay at Lazio, take their 5 million euros or whatever it was that he actually left on the table. But Sarri is not like that. So I think that there's something wrong with the squad at the moment. And I don't know what it is. But I think that something has to happen this summer. Remember that Sarri actually said a couple of weeks ago, I think he said that this squad needs to be a lot younger. He said that. And that's one of the few times where he's actually said something where if you say that, you're not criticizing the players, but you kind of are criticizing some players after all. If you say that the squad is too old, obviously the older players are the problem. I mean, at least according to Sarri. Or what is, am I saying something wrong?
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we were talking about this with Alasdair in the last podcast as well. The average age of the starting 11 of Lazio is impressive. Ciro Immobile is 34, Luis Alberto is 31, Felipe Anderson is turning 31, if I'm not wrong. Romagnoli is close to 30, Maruzic is 31. So you see, you have a lot of starting players that are above 30, and some of your key players like Luis Alberto and Ciro are getting older, and you can see it on the pitch. Ciro is not as fast as he was a couple of years ago, and that has a huge impact on the squad. So I think, yeah, go Alasdair.
I was going to just ask you a question based on, picking up on something Karsten said about there not being many big matches left this season. I disagree with that, because I don't think this is a free hit of a 2 months like Inzaghi had maybe when he took over, because you look at the way things are in the table, with 5th place potentially being a Champions League spot, Lazio could be 3 or 4 points off a Europa League place here, and that is nothing to be sniffed at. We should be aiming to qualify for the Europa League, so that Serie A is still alive for Lazio, and there are 10 games to go, which is a decent proportion of the season, as well as the chance to win a trophy, 3 games away from winning a Coppa Italia. I think there's still a lot to play for here. So that's why I'm a bit torn, and I wanted to ask you, there's 2 ways to go here. One route is doing the Tommaso Rocchi style route of getting an untested coach and seeing what they can do in the off chance that they're up to the task. And the other is getting one of your, ferryman coaches to take the club to the end of the season, like a Tudor or someone who's more experienced and therefore probably more likely to actually succeed. So which route do you go down?
So, to be honest with you, Rocky hasn't been called, and I don't think he will never be. He's managing the under 16. That's far away from professional football. So it would be a huge risk. But for example, Miro Klose yesterday said, they didn't call me, but if they did, I would accept a 6-month contract and would fly to Rome tomorrow morning. I think Klose would have been the perfect solution. You give him a 6 month, he tries out and see how it works. You have to go with an experienced manager. Tudor, the problem is, I think he wants a 2 years contract, so it's the long-term solution. B, he had problems wherever he's been, right? He's been having issue with the Marseille management team, Verona, everywhere. I can see arriving in Roma and fighting immediately with Lotito. So I don't think that's the perfect solution. So I don't know. Honestly, I think Martuscello is the worst solution Lazio could pick. But I fear that it's because of money. Martuscello is already on the financial sheet of Lazio. We don't have to pay anyone else more money. So we're going this route, which doesn't make sense.
So I think Miro Klose was working in Bayern Munich for 3 years, I think as a youth coach. and also as an assistant coach. And he left Bayern Munich when who was he assistant coach for? I can't remember, but he left Bayern Munich,
Yeah.
and now he's coaching like a second division team somewhere. I mean, at least he's had a little bit of experience with grown up football, with adult football. If you look at what Daniele De Rossi is doing with Roma at the moment, I mean, closer would be a sort of something that you could maybe compare a little bit to the De Rossi situation at Roma, because De Rossi is doing really well at Roma. I think long term, my favorite manager for Lazio right now would be to get Sergio Conceição from Porto. And I know that's going to be very, very difficult. As Alasdair said a couple of weeks ago, Porto is a huge club. It's probably a bigger club than Lazio, actually. But I think that at some point, Sergio Conceição, I think, would like to go back to Lazio. He's always talking about how great a time he had at Lazio, how close he is to the Laziali. And he's the kind of person, you know, every time Conceição is on the pitch as a manager, you tend to see he gets in arguments with everybody from the other team and everything. I kind of like that a little bit. I think you need that when you're a coach in Rome. And I would love to see Sergio Conceição in Lazio, but he's not cheap either. And the thing about Igor Tudor is that if Lotito wants Igor Tudor, yes, he probably wants a 2-year contract, but also Igor Tudor wants his assistants to come along as well. So he doesn't want himself only; he wants the entire team to come. And that's obviously much more expensive too. And I don't know if he's the right. I don't know him as manager well enough, so I have no idea. But I must say that I don't know that I think we should make that decision right now. I don't mind that Lazio pushes the decision until the summer, because the summer there's 1.5 months to get a new coach. He has 2 months to actually get his systems implemented, get to know the players, get to have them play in the right way. To get a real coach now, I don't know if that's going to do anything at all, to be honest.
My dream as well is to get Conceição. Even Almeida is doing well in Greece, and I think that would be an option. Now, my question I have for you is: Sarri was the best manager we hired under Claudio Lotito. Do you think we're going still on that route, hiring top-level manager, or we're going back to Petkovic, Reia, underrated manager, unknown names and things like that?
I think it'll be a really interesting move this summer. It'll say a lot about where we're at. I think it'll sound a few alarm bells, to be honest, for potential coaches, what's happened here. I think if you're a serious coach, you're looking for your next job, and you see a guy like Sarri with the experience he's got, the reputation he's got, the success he had last season, you see him walking out. You see him feeling so strongly about how badly things have unraveled that he just walks with 2 months still to go in the season. I think that sounds a few alarm bells. So it might be harder for them to convince a high-profile coach. And I said this when we talked about him a couple of weeks ago, Conceição, that I think in order to get him, you are relying on the emotional side of it. Objectively, Conceição is not going to take the Lazio job unless he has a link to Lazio. Thankfully, he does. So it could happen. You never know. But I don't think he would take that job otherwise, because why would he? He would see this dysfunction that is happening, and he'd say, I'm, going to step clear of that. And we were thinking about recently when Pioli left around the same time in 2016 or whenever it was, and Inzaghi's drafted in. Okay, and then Inzaghi keeps the job. Yeah, but that's only because Bielsa came to Rome, or didn't even come to Rome, and he said, "Oh God, getting the hell out of here." And he only lasted 48 hours. Bielsa had, he saw what was coming, so he got out of there. And I think that there are a few kind of signs that might put off a big coach. That's my worry.
But remember, Conceição was close to Napoli, and I would say that Napoli is the closest situation to Lazio, right? The owner of Napoli is even worse than Claudio Lotito. I mean, I don't know if you saw what he did in the last couple of days. It's a nightmare, and he was willing to take that job. So I don't know, Karsten, do you agree with me that Conceição would take Lazio's job, or do you agree with Alasdair?
I have no idea. I mean, but I do think I'd like to comment on your Napoli thing, Napoli-Lazio comparison, because if you look at where Napoli was 2 or 3 years ago, they had a dressing room that was a big problem. When Ancelotti came to Napoli, he basically told De Laurentiis, there are 2 or 3 players in the dressing room that is creating a lot of trouble for all the other players. You need to get rid of those players. And I'm not in the Lazio dressing room at the moment. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happened. But Lotito and the rest of the club, Lazio, they have to work out what the problem is. Because if it wasn't Sarri, and if it's not Lotito, it might be Lotito, but I'm not sure about that. If it's the players, they need to work out what should happen to the players. Because I'm not ruling out that a clear out is the right thing to do for Lazio. Everybody said when Napoli made a clear out last summer, like a year and a half ago, everybody said that's a huge problem for Napoli. They're getting rid of their best players, and they won the Scudetto the year later, or was it 2 years later? I can't remember. But still, at some point, I think Lazio will have to. I think they'll have to do a sort of turnaround. Luckily, Lazio have signed some really good young players this summer. Especially Guendouzi has been a huge success. I think Rovella is so good. I think one of the reasons why Lazio has not performed that well the last couple of months is the fact that Rovella has not played. I think Isaacson is fine. I'm not sure that he's a success, but he's done good things and bad things. I think our 2 defenders, we have 4 fairly strong central defenders. We have a really good goalkeeper as well. So I think that there are things in Lazio that you can build on with younger players. Because the midfield, if you just look at Rovella and Guendouzi, they're not old at all. But I think you have to start looking at Luis Alberto, maybe the 2 wingers, maybe Ciro Immobile. I would have to say, though, regarding Immobile, I just want to say one thing about Immobile. He's still getting the chances. And he's just not finishing them at the moment. Yeah. So I think that if you're still getting the chances as an old striker, if he wasn't getting the chances anymore, I would probably say he's finished, But he's still getting the chances. He's not a good finisher at the moment. So I'm not sure that he's completely done. But I think that something has to be done about the attack, because the 3 older guys in the attack, we've scored 33 goals in 28 matches. And they're the star players. That's the problem. I think that they have a lot to say in the dressing room, but they're not delivering. So maybe this summer it's time for a clear out. I mean, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it is.
I think the problem with the idea of a clear out is that requires organization. Lazio is not. I'm completely serious. Lazio have never been able to clear out players anyway, even if they want to. Even if you're talking about Andre Anderson or whoever, Lazio have never been able to get rid of players that aren't even in the squad, that aren't even registered. So the problem with this is, and I made a point about this on Twitter yesterday, that Lazio let Sarri down by not reinforcing the team with a single signing in January when they clearly needed it, and in the market generally not giving him what he needed. So I don't see, even if that's what we want as fans, I cannot understand how we can have any faith that the club is capable of organizing a clear out, of organizing a renovation of the squad. Even if you bring in a new coach who wants to do that, what are the chances, of the club getting, I don't know, what would count as a clear out? Say 7 or 8 players leave and the same amount arrive, something like that. That's a big change. How can we believe that a club that with this recent record in the market is going to be capable of organizing that?
Well, I mean, Felipe Anderson is leaving no matter what we do, right? I mean, unless we give him a really, really high wage. He's going to leave this summer. So that's one guy
that makes it easier.
It makes it a little bit easier.
Selling himself.
You have Sakani, who has 1 year left on his contract, and if he's not gonna get another contract at Lazio, he might leave as well. So that's one more guy. So that's at least two of the really heavy dressing room figures. And then I don't know about Luis Alberto, what that's going to take. I think Lazio should get rid of him no matter what it takes. So I think that the clear out, I agree with you that Lazio is not the best organized club in the world, Alasdair. But I think that there are some players that are sort of on their way out as it is. So I don't think it's completely impossible. And they have to do it at some point anyway. I mean, Sarri basically said so 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. He said, and then what about who comes in, though? Because if we're talking about bringing in young players, we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, but that requires spending a lot of money. There's no other way around it.
Can I ask you a question before we go on this route? Guendouzi mentioned that the reason why he picked Lazio was Sarri. So now that Sarri is gone, do you expect Guendouzi to ask to leave the club in summer? He's been the best signing this summer, right?
So no. I don't think he's leaving. I think Guendouzi is genuinely really, really happy about being in Lazio. I mean, Guendouzi is the sort of player who's always looked to be a key player everywhere he's played. He's always been a sort of substitute, but at Lazio now he's basically the first person on the pitch. So I think he's very, very happy about being in Lazio. I really do. I mean, you never know with these players. They always say they're extremely happy and the fans are incredible and all that stuff. But I do think that Guendouzi really enjoys being in Lazio because he's a key player now. In my opinion, he's probably Lazio's best player this season.
And do you expect now with the Sarri's gone that Kamada will start playing, or is not going to change?
Well, the thing is, okay, there's been a few quite funny, gifs and things about Kamada reacting to Sarri leaving, but he is about the only player in the team who that applies to. Sarri's generally been pretty good this season at giving people opportunities, using the squad, rewarding people's form with more opportunities, be that Gila, be that Isaacson, whoever. Kamada is really the only one that we've not really seen being given the opportunities that we feel like maybe he deserves. And on the flip side, I think there are more examples of players like Guendouzi who actually would really love working with Sarri. He said he really loves working with Sarri and how much he's learned. He's learned more in these 6 months than he learned in however many years before and things like that. So I think we lose a lot more than we gain in terms of motivation from players by making any change here, because Sarri is the kind of guy, because of his reputation and the style and his attitude to football, that attracts players. And it's hard to find a coach like that.
Yeah. Karsten,
it's a bit of a disaster.
Yeah. So when Jose Mourinho was fired at Roma, in the podcast that I do in Denmark, we were talking about, was Roma now in a better place now that Mourinho was gone from Roma, or what? And I basically said, I think that Roma is in a better place now because I think Mourinho was not a very good coach for Roma. But if you ask me the same question about Lazio, I would probably say the exact opposite. I think Lazio is in a worse place now because I think Sarri was a really good coach for Lazio. So I don't know exactly what to do with Lazio this season and this summer, but at the moment it's a big mess. We don't know what the players' attitudes towards all this is. We don't know what Lotito's attitude is. The only thing we can see is that Lazio is not performing on the pitch at all. I think we might look into a couple of years. I think there's a risk that we might look into a couple of really difficult years for Lazio, and it makes me sad. I think that losing Sarri is I almost don't see anything positive about it at all. Not like Mourinho. Mourinho was the other way around for Roma.
Thank you, Karsten. Now it's a much better day after these words. Thanks. I'm really confident.
What I'm hearing from Karsten several times now is De Rossi for Lazio.
I don't think it's the same situation. Sarri was trying to play football. Mourinho wasn't.
Yeah,
So, he started fighting against everybody, the referee, sport directors, other teams, etc. Sarri, no, he tried to play football. But going back to the key question, you usually sack the manager because you expect the players to start finally playing, start to perform. Do you expect Saturday, Frosinone Lazio, that Lazio players will finally go back to the level we were used to see them last year? Or with Martuscello, nothing will change and it will be the same players playing like they did against Lazio Udinese? Because I'm not convinced. I mean, if Klose would arrive, it would be completely different. But with Martuscello and all Sarri stuff staying, I think it won't change nothing, right?
Especially because we're coming off, and let's not forget this, we're coming off a defeat to Udinese that made Sarri quit, but a defeat to Udinese where Martuscello was the coach on the bench. So it's a bit of a disaster, that, because I just, like I said before, I don't understand how you can possibly draw a line under this or try and turn this into a fresh start with Martuscello. And I hope it's just because there's an international break coming up. There's not enough time to do anything else. So let's just get through this Frosinone game and find someone else to guide the team to the end of the season. Personally, I think the best route would be to, in the international break, find a coach with a bit more experience who you feel like can still finish this season strongly. I don't think Tudor is the worst idea, to be honest, not as a long-term coach, but as the guy to take us to the end of the season, just because, okay, I agree with what you said, Vittorio, that he's fallen out with clubs. He's difficult, but his last two jobs ultimately finished top half of the table with Verona, and he took Marseille to third. So,
yeah, but he wants 2 years of contract. So you hire him for 6 months and you pay him for 2 years. I mean, you forgot who is the owner of Lazio.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I'm saying on those terms, I would do that. But and if he does somehow oversee a massive upsurge in the team, then you can think about it. But I still think there's too much to play for still this season that we can't afford to just write it off and say, let's bring in the kids, let's bring in a coach with no experience, and let's see what happens. I don't think we can really afford to do that.
No, I don't disagree with you, Alasdair, on that point. I think that if you put in an assistant coach to Sarri who wants to play like Sarri, I think it makes sense in a certain way, because Lazio have been playing 4-3-3 the entire season. If you want to change that, you can't really do that in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. I think you need a whole summer. You need 2 months. You need a really, really long time to get a completely different system. I mean, it's a big deal when this team, Lazio, has for 2.5 years, they played 4-3-3. If you get somebody else in during the international break, let's say Miroslav Klose, and he says we're going to play 4-4-2 from now on, I think that's a risk, because these players have not been playing 4-4-2 for a long, long time.
Yeah, I don't believe that it's the 4-3-3 the reason why Ciro Immobile has scored only 6 goals this season, So, but we have to win against Frosinone. The situation is awful. The relegation could be, it's very hard, but Lazio still can be in that competition. If we start losing, we lost 5 of the last 6 games, guys. So
I think we have to remember, Vittorio, we have to remember that Lazio finishes off quite easily. So the last 5 games Lazio have, there's reason to believe, I agree with Alasdair there, there's reason to believe that Lazio can maybe produce a lot of points the last 5 games, because it's so lopsided. We play all the really great teams in the beginning of the season, and then the last 5 or 6 games we get all the bad teams. The problem is that some of those teams are going to be playing, to avoid relegation, so they have a lot to play for, actually.
So it's even worse for me. I mean,
I don't know.
Alasdair, to wrap it up.
To wrap it up, I would say it has been making me laugh quite a bit looking at social media, that seeing how many people seem to think the answer is that we switch back to a back three. This is like giving me serious deja vu of the end of Inzaghi's reign. Let's not forget how much criticism he was getting, how many Inzaghi out people there were. Well, look at him now. And at that period, everyone's saying, oh, we need to switch to a back four, 4-3-3. Then we do switch to it. We get one of the most famous 4-3-3 coaches in the world. And now everyone wants to go back to 3-5-2. So I don't think it's always that simple, guys. And let's see what happens. I think this is a really difficult moment for the club, but I think Sarri doing this has really shone a big light on where the problems are within this club structurally and with these players. And these players have a hell of a lot to answer for. And I really hope that if anything good comes out of it, is that it's a bit of a shock to the system across the club. And the coaching situation is a bit of a nightmare, as we've outlined. But maybe in the longer term, Sarri has done us a favor here by problems.
Karsten, do you agree? Do you think the players will take responsibility? Because I think this is the problem, right?
Yeah, I completely agree with. I usually try not to agree with Alasdair too much, but this is difficult to disagree with. I completely agree. I think the problem with Lazio at the moment are the players. I really do. I mean, they've had a great coach for 2.5 years. This coach has basically given up on the players. And I think Alasdair has a point when he says maybe this is such a big shock to the system that the system might change a little bit in Lazio. And I completely agree that that changing the playing system is not. That's not the point right now, and I don't think it's a solution to any problem at all. But I think the players need to step up. And hopefully, if anything good comes out of this, it might be the fact that the players will prove that that they're better than this. That the fact that Sarri gave up on them was the wrong choice by Sarri. But I think that Sarri decidedly gave up on these players, and that's not a good sign at all.
No, I don't think so. I hope they're going to play well against Frosinone and show everybody, it's all Sarri's fault, etc., etc. But, I mean, it's going to be tough. Anyway, we need to win, and we need a lot of points. We need to go through in the Coppa Italia as well. Very important. We still can save the season. This is the funny thing. I am not sure Sarri made the right decision, but, maybe long-term, as Alasdair was mentioning, is going to be the right decision. Thanks, Karsten, for joining me. It was a pleasure to have you back on the pod. You know that you are more than welcome whenever you want.
Thank you.
Do I have to say the same to you? Well, thanks, Alasdair, for joining me. You're not welcome, but well, after the rugby game, you're more than welcome, to be honest with you.
All right, that's 2 mentions now in 2 podcasts, so you need to stop that.
It's never going to end. I mean, thanks all the listeners for joining us. Yeah, my dog is complaining. We're going to be back next Monday after Frosinone Lazio, and looking forward, maybe we're going to have a new manager in the next podcast. Who knows? Take care, and we're going to be back next Monday. Ciao.